Welcome, welcome, welcome to this program on magnetic marketing for legal nurse consultants. Are you drawing attorneys to you through your irresistible marketing methods, or are you sitting and waiting for the phone to ring? Discover what you can do in 2023 to be more credible, more visible, and more busy. I'd like to introduce my fellow presenter, Barbara Levin. She has her master's degree in nursing and is a legal nurse consultant certified. She's past president of the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, and she supports legal nurse consultants as an expert witness. She is an expert who testifies as an orthopedic and a medical surgical nurse and is past president of the Massachusetts Board of Nursing, probably a different name, Barbara, than I'm using correctly. She served as the chair for several years and cares for patients as a clinical scholar at Massachusetts General in Boston.
And,
She is presenting with me today on marketing, magnetic marketing.
and I would like to introduce everyone to Patricia Iyer, who has her master's in nursing and is a legal nurse consultant certified. She, as well as myself, have been the past presidents of the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, and she supports legal nurse consultants nationally and internationally as a business coach. She currently helps attorneys with personal injury and medical malpractice cases. She is the author of at least 60 books and counting, and her website is legalnursebusiness.com. I invite you all to have your pens and paper here today so you can jot down notes from this conference presentation today, our session on overview of magnetic marketing for legal nurse consultants. I'm going to ask Pat the first question. Can you share with our audience the one technique that can make you immediately stand out?
And that would be video. Google now owns YouTube and has owned YouTube for the last several years. So Google likes to give preference to people who are posting information in a video format. YouTube videos that legal nurse consultants prepare that shares their expertise, introduces their services, gives the benefits of working with them, are all designed to bring attention to you as a legal nurse consultant. In addition to having a YouTube channel, you should have video on your website. At a minimum, who you are, how you serve attorneys, and the benefits of working with you. Because YouTube videos and videos in general show up so well in the search engines, you are missing the boat if you don't have at least one video available that highlights you, your expertise, and how you work with attorneys. I find that many legal nurse consultants, and by many I mean the majority, do not take advantage of this video technique. And it may be because you're intimidated by the technology. It may be because you don't want to be on camera. There are options to create videos without you having to be in front of the camera. It may be that you are concerned about not remembering what you would want to say or stumbling. All of those things get easier with practice. I can tell you from my experience that it's a little intimidating in the beginning, but it's a skill that you can master. And I'd like to focus now ask Barbara a question about professional organizations and how they come into play when you are thinking about attracting attorneys to you.
It is so important for all of you to be active in your professional nursing organization. Some people choose their nursing specialty. Others may do a nursing specialty that has subspecialties. For example, the Medical Surgical Nursing Association, there are multiple subspecialties. And then joining those associations as well, such as NAON, as an example, National Association Orthopedic Nurses. there are many wonderful nursing specialties. It is a great way for all of you to keep your finger on the pulse of your nursing specialty and practice. First and foremost is for you to determine what is your passion for your clinical practice. People have a variety of clinical areas that they that they work in, but what is your passion? I want you to consider volunteering. When you are volunteering for a position in your nursing organization, joining committees, writing for them, you continue learning, contributing, and bringing forth information to yourself and to others. I encourage you to do that, and it will truly enrich your clinical practice. For me, as a nurse expert, my passion is truly my clinical practice, and that is very important to me. My clinical practice is orthopedics, trauma, and medical surgical nursing. For me to bring my passion from my nursing associations that I belong to, and to bring that information to the bedside to enhance patient safety is really key to me. I enjoy educating my nurse colleagues, nursing students, and others. And once you're able to do that, then you can translate that forward. Part of being a nurse, as many of you know, is also being a teacher. And that will flow well into your legal nursing work. By participating in your nursing association, you will keep updated on current practice, standards of care, research, and many other things.
And Barbara, can you share with us a story about a legal nurse consultant who listed membership in professional organizations in her resume, and then it turned out that she was questioned on the stand as an expert about those memberships?
Yes, one of the cases that I worked on, a legal nurse had listed 5 or 6 organizations on her resume that she was an active member with. She did testify in deposition that she was a member, and at trial, the attorney brought forth he had actually done his research and learned that she was not a member of any of those associations. So when questioned about that on the stand, are you actively involved? And he listed the associations. Are you an active member of? And listed those associations. And her response was yes. Then he presented to her, well, I've done my research, and you are not a member of any of those associations. Her response was, well, I ascribe to what the association's values are. Well, that didn't bode well for her with the jury because now she was not truthful, and that was not looked well upon with the jury. And then the attorney was able to utilize that information and move forth with asking additional questions of her while she was on the stand. I'm sure that it was a truly embarrassing and horrifying experience for her. At this time, I'd like to ask Pat about websites. Can you share with everyone what information they should include on their website and perhaps that many legal nurse consultants overlook?
A website is critical. If you are not on the web, you're invisible. There's been a lot of work put into assembling information for websites for legal nurse consultants. But unfortunately, what I see is that many legal nurse consultants have interchangeable websites. And what I mean is that they are usually 4 pages. There's a home page, there's an about me, there's a services, a list of services, and a guarantee. And that's just not enough anymore. When Google is searching the websites looking for content, they want more robust websites than that. The services list is the same list on many legal nurse consultants' websites. It's almost verbatim. But what that tells the attorney is not as much as how can those services benefit me and what makes you unique as the person whose website that attorney is visiting. If you say, I locate expert witnesses, I screen medical malpractice cases for merit, I do chronologies, do timelines, I do research, that's the same list that you'll find in a lot of other websites. But what the attorney wants to know is, how is that going to benefit me? I screen medical malpractice cases for merit so that you don't take cases that don't have merit, so that you put your precious resources on the cases that have the higher chance of winning, for example. Maybe not those exact words, but the concept. And the word "so that" links the service to the benefit. But also keep in mind that many attorneys put legal nurse consultants in a basket called medical malpractice. If they handle personal injury cases, they don't care that you screen cases for merit. They don't need expert witnesses the way that a plaintiff or defense attorney might need a liability expert. They want to know, can you wade through those mounds of medical records and get to the essence of the case, to tell the attorney what's critical, to point out the things in the medical records that are going to hurt the attorney if he or she doesn't know about them. So your services page needs to be linked with the benefits. There are two things that I see legal nurse consultants consistently overlook that are holding them back from visibility, more authority, more credibility. One of them is not building a list of people who are coming to the website, attorneys who are interested in what you have to say, so that you can give them something valuable, an opt-in offer to get them on your list, to then follow up with emails. And secondly, not having video on the website, which I've already mentioned. And the third piece is that many legal nurse consultants are not blogging regularly. We've got so much knowledge that would be valuable to attorneys, and yet we hide it. We don't share it on our websites, or we don't use that in a productive way to repurpose it on LinkedIn or other websites. So it's critical that you consider having those pieces on your website, having an opt-in offer, having video, and blogging. And one little tip on blogging is that if you're not going to commit to doing it regularly, make sure that the date of the blog is turned off. That's something that your webmaster can do, because nothing says cobwebs on a website more than a blog that was written 2 years ago, never to be followed up with again.
Those are very helpful points. Have you ever seen people disclose information about their cases on their websites?
I have. I know of people who are putting information about active cases on their websites, which is just a wonderful gift to give opposing counsel, that you're sharing information on something that's not settled. I also, several years ago, found a legal nurse consultant who claimed to have worked on a case in Texas that involved an extraordinary verdict. I believe it was something like $240 million, some number that you would gasp at. And when I read her write-up of how she had worked on this case, it was verbatim from one of my books when I summarized this case. Now, I found it hard to believe that she worked on the case and she used my words to describe her role. That just didn't jive with me. And when I went back a month later to decide I was going to contact her and say, you know, I question this, she had taken it down. So yes, that is one thing to be aware of. And one other thing regarding plagiarism, one of my coaching clients found that a offshore virtual assistant had taken some blogs that she wrote, two of them in particular, and the legal nurse consultant's website had my coaching clients' blogs without any attribution. Now, my coaching client was not only a nurse, but an attorney, and she contacted the website owner and said, "You can't do this. This is my material. This is plagiarism. You need to remove that." And all I could think, and she ultimately did remove them. It took a few contacts, though, to have that happen. And I kept thinking, the virtual assistant was probably given the task of go find a blog and put it on the website. And that responsibility, that action by the business owner, highly problematic. Don't do that. Original material only, please.
Very important advice for everyone here today.
And while we're speaking about original material and writing, Barbara, let's talk about the value of writing for publication.
Well, you certainly know this well, Pat, as I have shared with our audience that you have published at least 60 books and you're still going strong. I mentioned to everyone earlier about determining your passion in nursing. Are you a NICU nurse? Are you neuro, cardiac, or are you another specialty nurse? Are you a general nurse? What is your clinical practice? Where do you currently work as a nurse? And determine how will you translate your knowledge and your skill from the clinical arena to your work as a legal nurse and to the courtroom. I encourage all of you to consider taking your passion forward. And as I mentioned before, being active with your nursing association and getting involved in writing, in publishing. When you are joining and participating, this will help strengthen your writing skills. Your name will be published and shared with others within your clinical arena, within your legal nurse colleagues, and also attorneys can read these as well. So I encourage you to consider getting published. It will add value to you as a legal nurse and as an expert. And I'm sure, Pat, you have additional information to share.
It is exciting to get published. And until somebody encourages you, supports you, guides you, it may never occur to you that you have information that would make a wonderful article for a professional journal. It's a way for attorneys to find you, particularly if you're an expert witness. If you are an expert witness, and I know not everyone listening to this or watching this is, however, we always have to be aware as experts, both Barbara and I have fulfilled that role, and she continues to fulfill that role, that what you put in print can and will be used against you if you take an argument in a case that is contrary to something that you have said. Now, there's always ways to work with the question of, well, you said, Ms. Levin, in this article, this, but now you're saying that, but that was a different case, different circumstances, different issues. Whatever we put out in writing is highly visible. I got involved in my first article when I was in graduate school in 1979, when I met a battered woman who was beaten so badly by her husband that she became a quadriplegic. And I remember sitting at this conference room as we were interviewing her for my psychology course, thinking, why did she stay? It wasn't the first time he'd hit her, and he took a baseball bat to her. I got interested in the topic. I wrote my article for a professional journal on that topic of the battered wife, because my nursing professor said that, Pat, you ought to submit this for publication. And I said, how do I do that? And it was accepted. It was published in 1980, and that was the beginning of my writing career. You never know what doors you open when you start getting involved in publication. My first book in 1986 on the nursing process and nursing diagnosis directly led to me being hired as an expert witness. I could say that I wrote a book on this process, and when you think about it, Most nursing malpractice cases involve some element of failure to follow the nursing process, or at least allegations of failure to follow the nursing process. So it gave me enormous credibility at a time when the court system was recognizing that doctors were not the ultimate experts for nursing care. In the mid 1980s, when I joined the expert witness world, it was still acceptable for a physician to say, well, I supervise nurses, so I know how they are supposed to function. No more. That's the difference. And the attorneys were actively looking for experts who were nurses who could fulfill that role to make that transition into nurses talking about nursing care. Now, I'm sure, Barbara, in the cases that you're involved in, you rarely, if ever, see physicians who are opining about nursing care.
That is so true. And we just really don't see that unless it's something extremely general. I've seen a few physicians state, because I work with them, perhaps I train them. There have been a few physicians who've stated that they are actively involved in the education and training, but it may be something very, very basic, such as when there is a change in a condition, the physician teaches forward that the nurses are expected to communicate those changes to the physician. So something such as that. I've had a really exciting experience that my publications, at times, of course, they are brought up in the courtroom, and opposing counsel's expert and perhaps the defendants have utilized my publications in their hospital or in their practice. And that was a very exciting time hearing that.
Well, I had an exciting time in a courtroom that was not quite as wonderful as that, when my book was held up to me and the defense attorney said, "You wrote this book for plaintiff attorneys, didn't you?" This was my nursing malpractice book. Barbara was one of the co-editors of that book. And I said, "May I see what you are referring to?" And she said, and I picked it up out of her hand. It was the foreword to the book. And it said, "This book was written," these are my words, "this book was written for plaintiff attorneys, defense attorneys, risk managers, and insurance claims adjusters." And the defense attorney asked for a mistrial because I used the word insurance. And the jury's not supposed to know that there's insurance out there in the world that's backing up defendants. The judge did not grant the mistrial, but it was pretty nerve-wracking for Watcher go back into her chambers and think about whether or not she was going to allow it. The defense attorney set the trap. I walked into the trap. She walked into the trap with me because she opened up the door for me to use the word. It was not pleasant.
Can you share with our audience another way of sharing about yourself? We've talked about websites. I'd like you to talk about LinkedIn and how our attendees can use LinkedIn to attract potential clients.
LinkedIn is a phenomenal tool to use, from the way that you structure your profile on LinkedIn, the words that you select for your header directly below your photo. The ability to share information to attract attorneys to you is phenomenal. There are lots of legal nurse consultants and lots of attorneys on LinkedIn. So how do you stand out? First is to look at your profile to make sure that you're using keywords that would show up in a search when an attorney was looking for you. Again, stressing the benefits of working with you, not that same tired list of services that I referred to earlier. How can you make that attorney's job easier? That profile should be well structured, spaced out well in paragraphs, use the amount of space that you're allocated, include videos. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, you can highlight key videos and have them show up on your profile. And then look at what you are sharing on LinkedIn. Are you sharing links to articles that would be of interest to attorneys? Barbara and I were talking before we started this morning about a nurse who went to a chiropractor who the allegation was that he tore 3 arteries in her neck when he was manipulating her neck. She got $1 million verdict at trial in Louisville. The defense was, oh, it was just a coincidence that she had a stroke. She ended up, because she was a nurse, recognized the symptoms, said, call 911, and they got there. And the jury believed her that, and the plaintiff prevailed in that case. That would be a wonderful article. Put that article on LinkedIn. Share some comments about how you would analyze that case. There are risks of vertebral artery dissections, carotid artery dissections from manipulations. It is a known risk. I did some research into this area one time in the past. You can tear blood vessels in the neck if you are manipulating improperly. When you add that headline and you add your comments, it shows you as a knowledgeable person. What doesn't come across as well is posts that say, hey, attorneys, I'm a legal nurse consultant. Hire me. Did you know you could hire me? Did you know I could help you? Hire me. That kind of self-promotion, although sprinkled in occasionally, is not the primary focus of sharing your expertise. That's just pure, blatant sales techniques. There are polls that you can do in LinkedIn. You can do slide carousels. You can put 200 to 300 word articles. You can include links back to your website so the attorney can find out more. All of those are great ways to show your expertise. And then also connect with attorneys. Look for people who are providing the kinds of services that you want to help with. Are you interested in medical malpractice attorneys, personal injury, toxic tort, workers' comp, product liability, criminal cases? They are on LinkedIn. All of those attorneys are on LinkedIn in those categories. And you can start conversations. Now, there's a difference between connecting with an attorney and immediately hitting that person with a sales message versus a low key, hey, I'm here, I'm available to help you. Please let me know if I can be of assistance. Start a dialogue. Those types of relationships are more like what we see in in-person relationships. You wouldn't necessarily walk up to an attorney, and Barbara will cover networking next, and say to that attorney, hey, I'm a legal nurse consultant, hire me. That wouldn't be a natural conversation. So use LinkedIn for its power. Consistently make connections, offering your services in a low-key area, posting valuable information on your timeline, and making sure that your profile is structured so that people who are going to your profile understand how you can help them. And I mentioned networking. I'd like to ask Barbara as our next question about some of the principles of networking with colleagues in order to become more visible and attract attorneys to you.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to use one story of one of our legal nurse colleagues who had great success recently at a conference. She had great success because attorneys were giving her the feedback that she was asking them about their experiences. How have things been going? How are they enjoying their education sessions? Versus somebody running up to the attorney, handing a business card saying, I'm a legal nurse consultant. I can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Take my card, call me soon. Well, you can see what the differences are for sure. Networking is a process and it adds value to your work. There are a variety of networking strategies, which include their joining networking groups and Those enable you to meet others within your profession and exchange helpful information as well as other professions. You can grow your database of personal and professional contacts by attending meetings, conventions, and even general conversations. And I'm going to give you an example, which Pat has shared her examples in other education programs, talking about how you can meet someone, perhaps at a meeting, at a supermarket. I've actually had the experience of meeting someone in a dentist's office. You never know where you're going to meet your next contact. While waiting for an appointment, and as many of you know, the dentist's office, oftentimes those appointments, you're not always on time. You're on time for the appointment, but the dentist may be running a little bit behind. So while having about a half an hour in my dentist's office, a group of us were chatting. I saw somebody who's familiar who said, "Gee, what are you doing these days? What is happening in your life?" And I explained that I was a legal nurse consultant. Well, perplexed and puzzled, "Are you an attorney? What does that mean?" Well, this is a great opportunity for you and certainly myself to share and bring it to a personal level of what you can do as a legal nurse consultant. So, by giving an example of perhaps some of the types of work you do, for example, suppose your brother has been involved in a multi-motor vehicle accident and sustained multiple injuries. And the brother has multiple medical records, and the attorney certainly is reviewing these and is having difficulty reviewing, let's say, 10,000 pages of medical records and understanding what the injuries are and the complications. So this is the opportunity that I was able to say, well, the attorney can turn to me as the legal nurse consultant to review, interpret, summarize, and explain the medical issues that occurred. The attorney can have me identify perhaps the experts that would be needed to explain the location and the damages of the vehicles and actually paint the picture of how the accident occurred by explaining the forces that the motor vehicle accident, the various cars and the trucks had during this accident, and identify how those injuries occurred. The attorney can also ask us as legal nurses, what types of medical issues, long-term and short-term, may these individuals have? And in this case, the brother have. So pulling it to a personal level and then sharing your knowledge and expertise can go far. Well, then the person that I was speaking with said, "Gosh, my cousin's a personal injury and medical malpractice attorney. Do you have a business card that I can share with him?" Well, this was a great opportunity for me to have an introduction to this person's cousin. So this is one area where this one connection can open the door to other attorneys, and it did. Other attorneys in the cousin's firm and others, because there was a firm down the hall from them, and there was one of the partners switched firms, brought my name along. I went in and met with both the law firms. It was a great opportunity, and I was able to work on several cases with both of them. So when you are networking, be authentic, be a giver, help and reciprocate with them. So whether it's an attorney that you're networking with, whether it's somebody in the dentist's office or one of your legal nurse colleagues, think and say, how can I help you? Take the time and take action. Make relationships personal. Get beyond what your competitors know about connections, and really important for you to keep the details private, because as you've heard during today's session, We don't want you taking any active cases and posting them and sharing them on Facebook, on LinkedIn, in your publications. Certainly, your client and opposing counsel would not be happy with that.
What strikes me about your story, Barbara, is just that simple conversation, which led to many hours and hours in cases working for the attorneys. Had you not answered the question that way, you wouldn't have had those opportunities.
That is so true. So you never know where an opportunity or a door is going to open for you as a legal nurse consultant. And sharing your knowledge and wisdom with others and asking how you can help move you in the right direction.
Yes, indeed. Wow.
Now, Pat, you have edited so many books over the years and with chapters written by others. Can you share with our audience a little bit about this process?
Yes, there have been the nursing malpractice book, the medical records book, pain and suffering book, a nursing home litigation book, our core curriculum, the principles and practices of legal nurse consulting. I was the chief editor for the second edition. Barbara was one of the co-editors for that book. I've probably forgotten a few more books in the list of ones that have multiple chapters. And then I've also edited compilation books, which is a slightly different model in the sense that the people who are part of a compilation book have made an investment in that book so that they gain the visibility, as opposed to the big textbooks that I published in the 1980s and 90s and 2000s. The key in today's world is taking advantage of the relationships and the cross promotion that you can get when you are an author in a compilation book. This is an opportunity for you to become visible to people you would never be able to reach any other way. And that's one of the joys of publishing, is that somebody picks up your book and it leads to new opportunities, new cases, new work, speaking engagements. I got invited to and spoke in Spain in the 1990s because of my nursing process and nursing diagnosis book. I went to Spain to teach for a college and wisely, I might say, gave myself a week in Spain rather than to fly in and then into Madrid and fly out right afterwards. My perspective about where the Spanish were in terms of the nursing profession was completely off. They were about 10 to 15 years behind us, much more of a handmaiden role at that time. I can't speak to what it's like now. And I would have gone in with a completely different talk had I not spent 2 days being toured, wined and dined with the dean of the school and the assistant dean, who took my mother and I on some beautiful excursions and gave me the chance to find out, what is nursing like in your country? Like, for example, they threw out the nurses' notes because they didn't consider them to be a permanent part of the chart. Barbara would be horrified as an expert to pick up a chart and say, where's the nurses' notes? How can I help you if I don't know what the nurses did? That one experience made me realize that the power of being published is so phenomenal and opens doors that you don't even see exist. I've put together just this past year a compilation book for legal nurse consultants, and we'll be doing another book in 2023. I'm sharing my email at the end if you're interested in learning more about that process. Our book was a #1 Amazon bestseller in 4 categories within about 4 hours and has consistently continued to sell. So I would say if anyone gives you an opportunity to be published, whether it's what Barbara referred to earlier as journals or chapters or write books, take advantage of it. It is a wonderful experience and it makes you grow and learn and puts your name in front of the people who want to hire you. So before we end, I want to ask Barbara one more question, which is related to your resume or curriculum vitae. How is it important to structure that so that when an attorney picks it up, the attorney says, yes, this is the person I want to hire to work with me?
Well, accuracy is key. We've seen in the news recently where one government official has embellished and lied on his resume. Your resume is actually your first work product, and thus it resembles you. This should be free of typos, stress your clinical skills and your accomplishments. Sometimes people start out with a 1 or a 2-page resume, and as they expand, perhaps they've been published, given lectures, their roles at their hospital or their workplace have changed. That becomes a curriculum vitae, and that grows with time. Know that your publication of your resume or CV is going to be viewed by your attorney, opposing counsel, judges, and others. And when I say you need to have accuracy, just like the example I gave before, where the nurse actually listed multiple nursing associations that she was a member of, and she was not, certainly that brought forth to the jury her credibility because she was not telling the truth. Avoid embellishing. For example, don't say that you're the administrator of the hospital when you're actually the bedside nurse. There have been individuals who have written down that they're the administrator because they are the charge nurse. Well, that's not an administration role. When you're the expert, certainly, as I mentioned, opposing counsel is going to review and analyze your CV. It's very easy for them to check the school that you attended, to check that your published articles are actually, they have your name on them. Also, be accurate with your nursing license. And when I state this, certainly you may have a nursing license, whatever state you're in, you may have a nursing license in a few states, and write those down. But what I don't want you to do is to say that you are an LPN and write on your CV that you are actually an RN. I have seen this more than a few times. So in one of the cases, the nurse, the LPN on her CV, when she was questioned about it, she stated she was actually in RN school, but she had not graduated yet. So that's not a smart thing to do. Take a look at your overlapping dates as well on your CV or resume. Were you working in one facility? Because sometimes this could be a red flag. If you say you're working in a facility from 2016 to 2020 in Texas, and then in 2018 to the present time in Kansas, is there an attention to detail issue here? Are you really flying back and forth between two different states to practice? Is that accurate information? An attorney doesn't want to waste their time and money on an expert who's inflating or lying on their resume.
You know, that's a great point, Barbara. And I think it's such a valuable document to get it right, to make sure that it's accurate, to sell your credentials. I also am thinking about the headline that just came out a little while ago about a place in Florida that was selling nursing diplomas to people, but enabling them to skip the education and to present themselves as nurses who had completed an educational program. Massive fraud. Thousands of people who left that money in the individuals in the company's hands to get a diploma and then went off and got hired. The last job that I had was a nursing quality assurance coordinator for a hospital in New Jersey. And we had a nurse who came to the facility who was interviewed, presented herself as being a registered nurse. She had taken the top part of a registered nurse license and the bottom part of her own LPN license and put them together and presented a photocopy. Now, it was done so clearly that it was not detected as a fraud. She ended up in ICU and she asked a question of one of the critical care nurses that alerted the nurse that this person didn't have the knowledge base to be working there. And then when they did the investigation, looked at the license, they realized what she had done. It resulted in a decision in the hospital to require nurses to show their original license, not a photocopy, and as a way to make sure that somebody wasn't misrepresenting their credentials. So just think about that. Somebody who ends up in the critical care unit who's an LPN, and I think her question had something to do with IV meds, about how you give IV meds, which alerted the critical care nurse. It's imperative, aside from those very interesting fraudulent examples, but it's imperative that your resume, as Barbara stressed, be proofread, laid out well, easy to read, accurate, and present you in a very favorable light. One thing that Barbara and I have seen on resumes, which does not belong, is a list of cases that you have worked on. That is not something that belongs on your resume. I also had a neurosurgeon one time send me his resume, and he had his DEA license number on his resume and his social security number on his resume. So I sent him a very polite note back and said, because of identity fraud, not a good idea to have those numbers. And he thanked me politely, and I hope that he changed them for the future. But sometimes we do things without thinking, or we see that information on other people's documents and we think it's okay to include it.
That is so true. At this time, I am sure there are many people who would like to get in touch with you, Pat. Can you share with our listeners how people would contact you?
Sure. My email address is patier@legalnursebusiness.com. And for Barbara, her email is barbara@barbarajlevin.com. We have time for some comments and questions if you want to put them into your LinkedIn screen. And in the meantime, while you're doing that, we wanted to share with you an exciting opportunity that's coming up very soon, at least it feels very soon to us, of March 23, 24, and 25, 2023 is Barbara and my 7th online conference. It's called LNC Success, and it is available for you at this link of lnc.tips/March 2023 virtual. We are presenting this as a 3-day program to give you an opportunity to get the support and the knowledge and the networking that you need, the encouragement that you need, because sometimes we are isolated as legal nurse consultants scattered around the country, needing to talk to people who think like we do, and we think in a special way. Our program has business leaders, attorneys, experienced legal nurse consultants, bringing you a learning opportunity to help build your skills, increase your knowledge, and help you with your business growth and business management. Barbara, would you like to share some more details about this program?
Absolutely. This is a great opportunity for you, whatever level you're practicing in as a legal nurse consultant, to connect with other legal nurses, attorneys, and others. You will have a lot of fun because we have some surprises planned. We have listened to you, our legal nurses and others about what ideas and content you want and need for your practice and going forward. We have nationally recognized speakers, and we also have some really exciting topics. We want you and your practice to soar. Are you thinking about expanding your legal nurse role? Well, there's opportunities to hear more about what could you do on your board of nursing. How can you become involved in a board of nursing and or assist attorneys bringing cases to the board of nurses? And what types of cases go before the board of nursing? Pat, I'm sure that you want to share some of the topics as well.
Yes, we brought in a referral expert who will share some tips on a comfortable way to ask for referrals so that you can get the answer that you're looking for. I will be sharing a program with Dr. Kathleen Ashton about the Charles Cullen case, who's become infamous because of the Good Nurse book and movie. Charles was a registered nurse who systematically killed people for 17 years, and I will be sharing my role in helping to identify the people who he killed. It was an interesting assignment. We knew who died, we knew who did it, but the question is, could we draw a line between Charles Cullen and the victims whose medical records I looked at? We'll be having a business expert share on marketing concepts to help bring people to you, as well as a couple of attorneys who will be working with me to do some expert witness cross-examination training. There are two plaintiff attorneys who routinely cross-examine nursing experts, and you'll learn from them the strategies that they follow.
We also have a power hour with legal nurse consultants who are going to teach you the ABCs of a business topic, as well as clinical practice and legal nursing, and a session on how to overcome the challenges of legal nurse consulting. And you will get to hear from some very experienced legal nurse consultants and ask your questions.
And speaking of questions in the chat, Tara has said, thank you for this informative webinar. And Casey asks, what is the best advice for someone like me who is just starting up and wants to make the next step to start connecting to clients?
I would say the best step is truly for signing up for our conference, and you will gain so much knowledge and information. We have so much to share with you. Bring your pen, bring your paper. You'll get handouts as well to take notes on, and we will help you.
And Casey, I would say to be visible is critical, as we've been stressing through this program. I think that legal nurse consultants need a website. They need to be sharing their knowledge on their website so that they are appealing to attorneys. Knowing clearly what type of legal nurse consulting you want to focus on is helpful. And then your question or your comment on, I feel unprepared for my first client when I do get one. It's helpful to have sample reports so that you take a case and work through it, or think about a clinical situation based on your background where you could prepare a sample report, such as a chronology or a timeline, so you get the skill of going through those records. I also have a course called Report Writing Mastery, in which I give the individuals who sign up for that course a set of medical records, and we go through how you write a chronology, a medical summary, screen a case for malpractice, and write an expert report. It is a learning process. There is a learning curve, but there are people around you who've been further down this path than you are, and the key is that you've got the desire, you're detail-oriented, you're open to learning and feedback. Those are critical skills when you are new and you're just getting started, is being open to what others around you share with you, and get a business coach, get into a group of other legal nurse consultants who are sharing comments, sign up for a listserv. There's one at lncexchange.com, which is excellent as a way to connect with people. Be open, ask questions. And no, you won't be perfect the first time, but none of us are perfect the first time.
We hope that we've inspired all of you to want to learn more and join us on March 23, 24, 25. As you see our link below, lnc.tips/March 2023 virtual.
Thank you for being part of this program. We're delighted that you are here with us. We've enjoyed sharing this information with you. I know it's a bit of drinking out of the fire hose when you think about all the things that we have covered. Focus on one to get started, whether that's your website, your LinkedIn profile. Focus on one piece. I'm part of a mastermind group who meets every Tuesday morning, and we were talking about the book, The One Thing. It is so easy to get pulled into so many different directions, but then you become, what is the jack of all trades and the master of none. Get one goal. I'm going to focus on one thing and then move on and take on another project. Otherwise, you just end up too scattered, and that doesn't lead to success. So be focused, ask questions, be visible, as Barbara and I have talked about. Don't be intimidated. Don't be afraid to open up your mouth in any setting and say, I'm a legal nurse consultant, and watch people's eyes. And if they are appearing interested, then tell them a little bit more about what you do, who you serve, what are the benefits of working with a legal nurse consultant. That is critical for networking. And as Barbara shared that beautiful example, a conversation in the dentist office led to work. We will let you go. So much, enjoyed so much having you with us today, and we'll be doing this again in February. Watch for notices about our next program. It will be different than this one, and we would love to have you come back and join us again.
We look forward to seeing you.